From San Antonio, Texas, home of the Alamo, the Riverwalk, and the World Heritage San Antonio Missions, this is the Exit Planning Coach podcast with John F. Dini. Designed to help advisors who work with business owners, John talks with top professionals in the exit planning field about best practices, marketing tips, and how to be more effective when working with owners. Now, here's John F. Dini.
Welcome to today's episode of the Exit Planning Coach podcast. I'm very excited today to be able to welcome three of our previous guests who are here to talk about a particular issue. We have David Jean, who is a CPA, a CCIFP, and a CExP from Albin, Rendell, and Barrett in Portland, Maine. Besides being an accountant, David does a lot of industry and benchmarking and analysis, especially in the construction trades. And he is past chairman of the Association of Builders and Contractors of Maine. We have Mike Leannah of Business Value Strategies. Mike has over 20 years in a C-suite executive position in a Fortune 100 corporation. And he started BVS to do valuations, continuity planning, and help prepare clients for their exit event, including by enhancing their value in business consulting. And we have Jamie Moore of Moore and Kerbaway in Michigan, several offices in Michigan. He is a senior contributing fellow to the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys. He is an estate planning attorney himself. And just for a change, it's a change of pace for him because previously he was a Marine that served in Vietnam. Welcome, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you. And thank you for taking time out of your day. The question today is, as an attorney, a CPA, and a business consultant, if you were asked to assist with a client and you discovered that they had an existing advisor in your profession, or probably another profession, who is not qualified to be advising the client, what actions could you take? Jamie, are there legal obligations if you know that another attorney working with the client is not qualified to be giving the advice that they're giving?
Well, John, all state bars have rules of professional conduct, and we're one of the few professions that self-police a little bit, so we have to be familiar with those. One of them is you have to always act in the best interest of the client. Now, some of that's subjective, your own idea of what that means. But the obvious one is you're supposed to ask if you're contacted by a client, can I do this work? I mean, have I done it before? Do I really know what I'm doing? The client doesn't know that, especially with a general practitioner. So I always just, if I know something about the firm, or ask the client a little bit about who they are and what they do. And if they're a general practitioner or something, I may have a suspicion that they don't know, but then the rest is just dialogue. If I know for sure, there's a couple of people in my county, for example, if I hear that name, I've been in court 3 or 4 times with that particular firm because I know they don't do good work. I just know that. If I know that, I have an obligation to say to the client. If not, it's my own judgment on do they have the client's best interest at heart or not, and then communicate that however I should do that.
David, under AICPA guidelines, how do you handle another accountant who's already working with the client and whether and decide whether they should be or not?
Well, it's interesting because how I've approached it has evolved over the past several years. When I first started doing comprehensive executive planning several years ago, we would work with the incumbent CPA, and we would try to work collaboratively and assisting clients with comprehensive exit planning services. And early on, one of the things I realized that it doesn't work well. The relationship can be a bit contentious, conflicting, particularly if I'm providing advice that conflicts with the advice of the CPA. And there's always that sort of jockeying for position, so to speak. So I did that a couple of times, and I realized that this is not resulting in the best outcome for the client. At the end of the day, it's really what we need to do is what's best interest for the client, and not what's our best self-interest. So, for a number of years now, I require that if we're going to work with a prospective client or a new client with exit planning services, that we take over the accounting and tax work. So we became sort of the CPA on record. And that can sometimes be troublesome for some business owners that have a long time established relationship, maybe with the CPA, maybe they were college buddies or or the case may be. And sometimes that's a deal breaker for not wanting to work with us. But at the end of the day, if I can't control the process, particularly that given that so much what we do is tax financial strategy related, and I really need to be sort of in the weeds, in the trenches. I just feel that that's the only way we can really provide maximum benefit to our clients is for us to take over that work. So for me, not so much of an issue as it is perhaps with Mike.
Just get him out up front. That's easy.
Rip off the Band-Aid early on.
Mike, let's riff off that for a minute. It's not an advisor. It's a personal relationship. It's a friend. It's a golf buddy. It's somebody you went to college with, who's in the client's ear and telling him stuff that is just not right.
I mean, what I try to do is work with the client, understand where they're coming from, and if they do have an advisor that's advising them, what I try to do is, my approach has always been, how do I increase the value of your business? How do I help you increase the value of your business? And so I might add. So if they're lacking something, I could add. This approach will add value to your business, and here's the reasons why. And then then they can decide, do I want to do that or not? So I let it up to them, but I kind of give them additional options to which they can take it and increase the value. And I always tell them I'm looking at it from a buyer, because my background has been in buying companies. So I said, I'm looking at it from a buyer's perspective. I'm not looking at it as a I am looking at it as a business consultant, but I'm also looking at it as a buyer. It's because that's what's going to drive the value for that owner.
David, you take over the accounting work, and again, the golf buddy is their personal CPA, and they say, well, I'm going to continue my relationship. He'll do my personal stuff, and you can do my business stuff. And you go in, and I know you have to go back and look at prior work, and you find they missed a lot of stuff. And he's going out to play golf with this guy on Thursday. How do you phrase that to the client?
Great question. That does happen more often than you think. That sometimes with the new set of eyes, sometimes you catch things, you pick up things, or perhaps it may be a preparer that's not keeping up with the latest tax strategies or tax laws or tax regulations, and things get missed. So, what we do in those sort of situations is, we sort of document, we provide, supporting documentation or regulations or tax law, or the case may be, to support our position and, help the client understand, this is the issue. These are the risks and so forth. And sometimes, we leave it up to the business owner to decide how they want to broach that topic with their existing personal preparer, their friend, and so forth. And it's a delicate situation. But our job, right, is to bring value, to be forthcoming, and identify those areas that really needs to be addressed. So it's a challenge.
Yeah. It's I had a case some years ago. I was working on the buyer side, and the sellers had written off considerable spoilage every year in their inventory. And when it came time to sell, miraculously, it was all unspoiled. And their CPA, who is a solo CPA in a rural community, said, I've got a great idea. We'll bifurcate the deal, and you can sell the inventory on an installment plan. And this way you only have to recognize the taxes when you get paid. And I said, no, I think if you mark up the inventory, you're going to have depreciation recovery. He insisted that was not the case. And this goes to what you were saying about keeping up. I sent my buyer back again. I said, you have to talk about this because this is not going to work. You're going to wind up in a lawsuit because it was about $800,000 or $900,000, and they obviously were going to get a tax bill for the whole thing as soon as they inked the transaction. And the CPA insisted again. I'm a certified public accountant. I know what I'm talking about. I sent him back again, and I said, please tell him to look up the sections on depreciation recovery. And he came back to his client. He said, "Well, they must have made that change last year." He says, like, "Oh, yeah, I did."
Yeah.
Good
Anyway,
comeback, though.
yeah. Jamie, what about a client has had a bunch of legal work done. He's got a perceived investment in it. He's paid a lot of money to have some documents drawn. And as you're working, you go through it and you see that the documents have problems and there's things that need to be changed. How do you address that with the client?
Well, I like to put it back on the client. It's a compliment to work with us. George, I mean, you've reached a different level in your planning. I mean, I'm just so proud of what you've done. Look what you've done here with ABC Buggy Whip. I mean, it's incredible. So you've reached a different level and you need a different level of expertise. That's normal. It's a compliment to you. So I see you have Smith, and Smith. And, the question for me as your coach, and sometimes I use your quote, John, of Tom Landry, coach points out things that you don't want to see, tells you things you don't want to do. Why? Because he wants you to be the best player you can be. So you're the quarterback, Mr. Business Owner. I'm just a coach. And this is what we do. So we review and we look, and our eyes are just not what's wrong with your plan. Only 20% of people have one. So you're already ahead of the class because you got a plan. The question is it going to work? Two kinds of things in the world, things that work and things that don't. If it was all about the documents, no problem. We're not in the document business. We're in the coaching and counseling business. And we spend a lot of time unpacking what you want to have happen. Alive and well, alive and not well. What if you get hit by the beer truck? All this stuff, we're going to ask you some difficult, thought-provoking questions. Then and only then can we create documents or give you any advice. And so tell me about your relationship with Mr. Smith Jr. And more often than not, they go, I don't know, they just gave me this stuff to sign. And then we do it a little differently, more complete, more thorough. We're unique, blah, blah. So how do you know your lawyer better than I do? How do you think we should? Can I just call them and have it? Yeah, please do that. Would you rather have a cup of coffee and unpack some of this? And I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to come alongside and make it work. Is that okay with you or not?
Great. Thank you. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back in a moment. Hello, John F. Dini here, and I'm very excited to announce the publication of the Exit Planning Coach Handbook. Inspiration for the handbook comes from my 25 years of working as a coach to business owners, with 12 of those years dedicated to helping them plan their business transitions. It is a guide for advisors that explains why working with business owners is so dramatically different from working with other executives. It provides insights on how to approach planning conversations with owners more effectively. Plus, it takes you through the steps that will help you develop your relationship as their most trusted advisor. I wrote this book for advisors who want their clients to move on to a second act that's even more rewarding than their first. If you read any of my previous books, you know I don't lecture. It's a conversation between two professionals. If you work with business owners, I strongly encourage you to read the Exit Planning Coach Handbook. I think it will quickly become a go-to in your reference library. It is currently available on Amazon and the Kindle store in paperback and as an audiobook. Welcome back to the Exit Planning Coach podcast. I'm here with David Jean from Alban Randall and Bennett in Portland, Maine, Mike Leannah, North Carolina with Business Value Strategies, and Jamie Moore of Moore and Kerbaway in Michigan. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for taking out the time today. This is really valuable to our advisors to hear how people handle it. Let's talk about assessing this issue. I mean, it's one thing to be digging into the tax returns or digging into a legal agreement and finding something that somebody did wrong. But just when you walk in the door and they say, well, I'm already working with so-and-so. I want to work with you, but I'm already working with so-and-so as well, and I want him to still be on the team. How do you assess the players on a team? David, you want to start off with that?
Sure. When we have our introductory meeting, typically what I'll do is I'll take an inventory of who their advisors are, their banker, their insurance person, their attorney, their accountant, and so forth. And really, what we try to do is we try to ask the business owner, tell me a little bit about the relationship. What do they specialize in? What don't they specialize in? Are you happy with them? You've been working with them for a long time. If we're going to go into a complicated transaction, are they equipped? Like the legal team, are they equipped to handle this? Do they have someone in the office that can handle this? If you're not sure, can you inquire to make sure that they have the horsepower to deliver on whatever plan that we've set? And we say, look, if you don't have the right players on your team, we certainly know some people that are quite capable, that could do a wonderful job, that I've worked with, that I know how they work with. They work very collaboratively. I'm not requiring that you change your team. Just acknowledge that, make sure that you have the best team in place. And we're really the advocate for the client. We want to make sure that the best team in place. And again, we don't require that they change their advisor, with exception of the CPA, as I noted before. But again, just understanding that this is an important transaction, probably the most important transaction of your business career, and we want to make sure that we do a great job. So that's kind of our approach.
And Mike, when do you take your first look at the whole team?
I take a look at it, right away. I try to get, okay, who are your advisors, and similar to David, what are they doing? What do they accomplish for you? And then as we work on the plan, and we work on a transaction, and I'll give you an example, one that just closed here not too just recently. He had several advisors. But as we were developing the plan, it became a significant amount of money. I said, your advisors don't have the, do they have the M&A, attorney experience and knowledge that you're going to need, and because it was a sizable transaction. And so, what I do is and I know people, so I recommend or at least, hey, look at these people, look at this, look at your tax strategy. Do you have the right tax strategy? I don't try to take away what they have. I try to add on, because I think, as David said, you're at a different level. I think as James said, you're at a different level. So as you in a different stage in the business, and as you get larger, you may need more knowledge. And I'll give an example. I work with business owners, and one of the things I talk about is a Olympic gold medalist has 11 coaches. Typically, when I talk to an owner, they might have 3. They might have a CPA, an attorney, and maybe a financial planner. And I said, do you want to be a gold medalist, or do you just want to be, somebody that participated? And of course, most want to become gold medalists. So I said, so if a gold medalist needs 11 coaches, is 3 enough for you to do the transaction that you're looking to do? And if you're not, then let's get the right players on the team that will help you accomplish what you need to accomplish. And another example I use is the NFL. You got 55 players on the team, you probably got 20 plus coaches. And so if the ratio to players to coaches is X, and you want to win the Super Bowl, can you come in there with just a couple of coaches and make it happen? The answer is probably no. And so kind of gets them thinking, gets the owner thinking, hey, maybe I do need to up my advisory group, in numbers and maybe in quality, or quantity and in quality. So that's the approach I take with them.
Okay, and Jamie, we talked about this earlier. We were talking about, we were offline. We were talking about quantifying the risk for a client. How do you express that? How do you talk about risk to a client and what might not happen if they don't get the right advisors?
Well, I have a corny analogy that's just worked. I don't even know where I got it. It doesn't matter anymore. It's like speakers. It's, well, as John Dini said, blah, blah. And then after a while, it's as someone said. And then eventually you get a little Q-tip going on. You say, well, as I've always said,
Right.
So the analogy is, you go to your regular doctor. Been great. My doctor's awesome. I've had him for 30 years, and he does a physical, and your brain's fine, your bone density, you're doing great, great. Oh, but you got a spot on your X-ray. What, a spot? What do you mean? Thanks about the other, and it's going to require surgery, a surgical specialist. Well, your regular doctor's not going to do that. And if he has your best interest at heart, he's going to say, let's find a surgeon that does this spot. And that's the risk to you, that if you go with the generalist, they will do the best job they can. But again, you have this unique situation going on here, and you need someone that this is what we do almost exclusively. And does that describe your current relationship or not? And then lastly, you may know something about them. If it's a firm, like in my wheelhouse with other attorneys, there's only 2 or 3 other firms I know of in our whole mid-Michigan quarter that do what we do. If it's not one of those names, they're just not experienced enough. That's all. So it's not a criticism. I love what you said, Mike, about you want a gold medal or not. It's simply you want a plan that works or one that doesn't. That's where it's not our job, Mr. Business Owner, to set your goals for you. It's to help you accomplish them. And you got to have the right team to do that. And from my seat on the bus, we may want to have a nice chat with Smith, and Smith.
Yeah. Well, and on the positive side, every once in a while it happens. I had a client that we were doing an internal transfer, and we were going to start it off with some options. And I sat down in the first meeting and I said, we're looking at options here. It was pretty set when they came to me. I want this young man to own my company down the road, licensed professional services. And I said, well, this is one way we can do it. But of course, if we do that, I would recommend that you file an 83B, to set the valuation and not have a tax problem down the road. And the CPA said, you know what? You just said something that I didn't understand. I think I'll continue doing his personal returns. Find somebody that can handle all this stuff for him. I said, thank you very, very much. You just became my favorite advisor on the team. Yeah.
Well, they'll say that sometimes. I've been with, Smith & Smith for years, and they've been great, but I understand that this might be a little different, then you just play off that.
Mm-hmm. How about potential conflicts of interest when you're in this situation and you're saying something has to be redone? The business owners are generally reluctant to bring in more advisors. We all know this. I mean, it's just dollars flying away with little wings from my bank account. How do you address when they go, well, that sounds like it means more work for you. Why is what he's already done for me insufficient? Do you just want to be able to redo it your way? David, what do you say? What do you say about that?
My situation, it's a little bit easier because in terms of the peer, right? I'm no longer competing with another CPA, so it takes some of that away. I think what becomes a little more difficult is perhaps reviewing that's been done by perhaps the legal team, maybe the buy-sell agreement, or sometimes there's situations where this wasn't well thought out. Or I know I always get chastised when I say this, but a lot of attorneys use boilerplate documents and fill in the blank, you copy and paste, and now you have a bulletproof buy-sell agreement and a plan when in fact it's not really relevant. It's not very well thought out. So sometimes that could be a bit of a delicate situation where you say, look, I think you got a great starting point. I think Jamie kind of earlier got a great starting point. You got a great set of working documents. Not quite there, so we need to tweak. Even though it may be a massive overhaul, you don't necessarily approach it that way. It's a great starting point, but let's work on it. But sometimes if you do things in pieces, sometimes that's a little more effective than sometimes taking a stronghold to it and completely wrecking everything. So again, situation, the dynamics, the people that you're involved, and so forth. So it's
don't we also know instinctively as human beings that things change? Things change. Everybody's different, and everybody dies. So just because you've done X, Y years ago doesn't mean you still have something that's going to work then. Wow, what a great plan you had 4 years ago. But now you've outgrown it. The law has changed. Your circumstances have changed. That's why we're talking. It's just different now. So can we accomplish what you need to do with your existing team? If I could just help collaborate, great. But if not, I love what you said, Mike. You want a gold medal or you just want to participate? It's up to you.
Yeah. And Mike, you ever have a client like raise their eyebrows and say, why are you getting involved in my lawyer's work or my CPA's work or my insurance guy's work? Or
I always tell my clients, I said, you know what, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, and I'm not a financial planner, but I know enough to be dangerous. And so therefore I'm going to, at the time, I'm going to talk to those people that know more than I do. So I question, and how I present it to a client is I'm not going to take away from them, but I may question them that in an area that I might know of that you're not aware of. So I'm trying to help them in that aspect is, okay, I may know more than you know, so I can maybe ask a more pertinent question, but I'm not to take away from it. It could be just let's enhance it and let's perfect it.
But John, if I could just add one thing, sometimes conflicting advice is helpful. So if you're offering advice or suggestions or recommendations which differs from, let's say, the financial advisor, the attorney, the consultant, sometimes it's nice to get a perspective on different approaches into why, the pros and cons, or why I'm recommending this over this. And sometimes that's healthy conversations. And I think that the more we can educate our clients, the better the outcome and the more comfortable they are, with the process.
I think you're right. I think you're right, David. That's exactly, it gets the conversation going, and then it gets a better understanding. It allows the owner a better understanding, and then they're making an intelligent decision rather than just a decision.
Mhm.
Well, and if none of that works, I just tell them, look, I'm going to put on my Marine Infantry officer hat and we're just going to kill them all and let God sort them out. How does that?
That works too.
That's option B.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, David?
I probably was, but unfortunately, I've got the attention span of a squirrel.
Well, we're all in trouble. I saw Doonesbury 2 weeks ago, and I'll just paraphrase it quickly. College kids bartending, and at a garden party, and a guy asks him what he's gonna be when he gets out of college, and he announces that he's pretty much decided that he's going to write prompts for ChatGPT. In some fields, he doesn't care what field it is. He's just going to write prompts. And he asked the guy, he said, what do you do? And the guy says, well, I'm an attorney. And he says, oh, wow, man, do you have like a side hustle you can fall back on? So,
Yeah.
So we're all threatened, but as long as we can keep giving good advice, I don't think ChatGPT will ever get the trust of the client. Going to wrap this up. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. Anybody have a last comment?
I promise one bad joke per visit. So
Oh,
expecting the IRS to be friendly is like expecting a grizzly bear not to eat you because you're a vegetarian. And I learned from my partner who's a vegetarian, I tease him all the time, that the Apaches actually have a word for vegetarian: bad hunter.
great. Now we're going to wrap it up. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. I know it's the middle of the day and everybody's got plenty of work to do. It's busy out there, but it really has been fun and educational. And I thank you all again. I really appreciate it.